Oh, and welcome to the first of 3 pre-law sessions for Junior Jumpstart. I'm so happy to see everyone here. I'm Nicole Gore. I'm Assistant Dean in the College of Arts and Sciences and the Director of Pre-Law Advising. Right now, I am the only pre-law advisor at the university. But I'm working with the Career Center to rebuild a team of pre-law advisors by the fall semester so that you'll have other people to speak with besides me, but I am very happy to speak with everyone at any time. So there are a couple of other members of the pre-law team. We have Susan Lowther, who's in the Writing Center, and she will give the presentation on Wednesday about personal statements. And then we have Dorothy Geitz, who's our pre-law coordinator. So what we're going to do today is to go through the components and timeline of a successful law school application so that if you're planning on applying to law school in the fall, you will know what to work on over the summer. And even if you don't think you're going to apply this fall, we want to send you away with a few things to think about for your future planning. So first, let's go through the components. Here are the application components. We have LSAT and GRE score, undergraduate GPA, letters of recommendation, personal statement, and resume. Okay, so we'll go into each of those in a little more detail. First, the LSAT or the GRE. So those are two different standardized tests that are options to submit for your law school application. The LSAT is the only test accepted for admissions purposes by all ABA accredited law schools in the United States. Law schools rely pretty heavily on the LSAT to predict success in law school. It is designed to assess critical reading, analytical reasoning, logical reasoning, and persuasive writing, key skills needed in law school. So due to COVID-19, the LSAT put in place an online remotely proctored version of the LSAT called the LSAT Flex. So it used to be with the LSAT, you would go take it in person, sitting in a big lecture hall probably and taking your test. So when all the COVID restrictions came about, they changed. You would get a little tablet. They would send you a little tablet and you would take it online, live proctored, wherever you were. And this turned out to be a really popular format for the test. People really liked it. So the LSAT Flex format is going to continue through June 2022. The LSAT is administered 8 to 9 times a year. So most students applying for law school in their senior year are going to take the LSAT either in June, like this summer, if you're going to apply senior year, or in the fall of your senior year. This year, there are dates for the LSAT scheduled in June, August, and October, and any of those would be fine if you're planning to apply for law school in fall 2021. So, the advantage to having your application ready and taking the LSAT early in June or even August or October, I would consider all of those early dates. Those will allow you to apply, I think, what we would call, early in the cycle. That being said, I have seen students apply to take the LSAT and take the LSAT in November, December, January, and sometimes later than that. While that makes me super nervous, I have seen students have success taking the LSAT that late. Of course, we don't know what kind of opportunities were available to them or weren't available to them because they applied so late. We don't know what kind of scholarships they didn't receive. And so that's not a recommended strategy, but if something happens and you do decide that, kind of later in fall 2021 that you want to go to law school and you haven't yet taken the LSAT, that's something we can talk about. And I've certainly seen students take the LSAT that late and apply to law school and still have some success in the cycle. This past cycle, so the 2020 cycle, you may have heard applications were way up. I think there weren't as many job prospects due to COVID-19. A lot more people decided they were going to apply to law school. And so it was a real disadvantage in this past cycle if students did not apply early. I think students with similar LSATs and GPAs who applied in September had a very different outcome than students who applied, December and January. So while usually I think it's okay, I did see kind of a variance in success this past year, and we don't know what this upcoming cycle will bring. I would predict that it's still going to be a pretty a higher than usual application cycle, but we don't have any data on that yet. So a number of schools, over 60 law schools now, take the GRE as well as the LSAT for law school admissions. So students often ask me if they should take the LSAT or the GRE or both. If your primary goal is to maximize chances for admission to law school, take the LSAT. That's the only test, as I said, that's admitted or taken by all law schools. So when might be applying with the GRE be a good idea? Maybe you've already taken the GRE. So if you've got a GRE score, I don't think you need to take an LSAT score in addition, and you could certainly apply to law schools with the GRE score that you have. Or maybe you plan to apply to both law schools and graduate schools that take the GRE, then it would be fine to use the GRE. And so how will schools evaluate your standardized test scores? So the LSAT is considered highly predictive of how a student will do in law school. So it's a very important component of the application. Law schools are going to put a lot of weight on your LSAT score. And so you never just want to take the test. Sometimes students will say to me, oh, I'm just going to take this test. We'll see how it goes. I'm not going to study. I don't think that's a good idea. I think when you take the test, you want to be prepared. You want to set aside time to study and do your best. That doesn't mean you can't take the test again. But I think you really want to shoot to take it once. If you had to retake it, that's fine. But I don't think you ever want to go into the LSAT or probably the GRE not having studied at all or made a plan to study. And so how do you study for the LSAT? That really depends. I think it depends a lot on what kind of student you are, and you are able to assess that for yourself probably better than I have. So I certainly know a lot of students who study on their own and a lot of students who take prep courses, right? They're the big test prep companies like Princeton Review and Kaplan. Khan Academy online has free LSAT prep. So I always think free might be a good way to start. I wouldn't mind at all if you sat down, to take the Khan Academy LSAT without studying, just as a diagnostic to see where you stand. When where are the areas of the test where you're stronger? Where are the areas of the test where you're really going to have to practice? Start with that. Khan Academy will make a plan for you, a study plan. And so you could start with that and go from there. If you feel like you're the kind of student who needs maybe a little bit more accountability and structure of a course, then you might look into a commercial test prep company. If you're a pretty self-motivated, and disciplined student, you might be able to just get some LSAT books and study. The LSAT is not testing any academic subject matter. It's testing your ability, to read and write and think. And so, you don't have to take the test unless you plan to apply in the fall. I don't think there's any real rush to take it. Sometimes students say to me, well, I'm in a school frame of mind now, maybe this would be a good time for me to take the LSAT. But if you don't plan to apply for a couple of years, it's fine to wait and study and take the test at a later time, especially if you have a really busy senior year planned otherwise. Often students will plan to study for the LSAT, but it might be that LSAT prep is the thing that gets pushed to the side as you have classes and tests and papers and extracurricular activities and maybe work to do. So just be really realistic about the time you have to study for the LSAT. Okay, and so I don't think anybody needs to spend all summer studying for the LSAT. It's not the kind of thing where you need to just kind of clear your calendar and only study. I would suggest probably at least probably like 6 to 8 weeks of preparation, dedicated preparation, but you could also, take one class, or if you had a job and also study. You just don't want to have a job, be doing research, taking a class and studying for the LSAT. So again, I think just being mindful of your time and how much you can take on, in the dedicated time that you plan to study for the LSAT. Okay, the second element is undergraduate GPA. And so this is another really important element that law schools consider. Schools vary a bit on whether or not they put more weight on the LSAT or the GPA. Some law schools weigh the GPA a little bit more, more heavily because it really demonstrates sustained academic achievement. And that can be a better predictor of future academic achievement than how you do on a test in one day. But they're both really important elements. So the transcripts that you need to submit, you will need to submit your undergraduate transcript from WashU and any other transcripts from US colleges you have. And that includes college work that maybe you did in high school. Okay. If you study abroad for less than 1 year, you do not need to submit the transcript from that international institution. So if you only study abroad for a semester or a summer, you do not need to submit that transcript. So in order to give law schools a uniform basis for comparing applicants, the LSAT grades converts grades earned at US institutions to a standardized system. These converted grades are included in your LSAC academic summary. So that's on the LSAC website. And for any of you who had have earned some A pluses during your time at WashU, while we don't give extra GPA points at WashU for an A plus, the LSAC does. They will give you a 4.3 for any A pluses that you've earned. Withdrawals, any courses that you've withdrawn from, are not figured into your LSAC GPA. Pass fails, if you pass the class, that doesn't boost or lower your LSAC GPA. If you fail a pass fail class, that does count for a 0, just as if you failed a class that you took for a grade. So that is not ideal. And so in addition to the number of your GPA, I don't want you to think that schools just look at, your undergraduate GPA just as an isolated number. Admissions committees look at the courses that you took. They go through your transcript. And so you want to make sure that you've demonstrated an increased level of rigor through the years, that you were at WashU. And then let's talk a little bit about the spring 2020 semester when everything just went completely haywire due to COVID. So if you took all of your courses pass-fail that semester as WashU allowed and a lot of schools allowed, please do not worry about that. In general, I would say you wouldn't want to overuse the pass-fail option, but clearly, there were a lot of extraneous circumstances at play in spring 2020. And in fact, the LSAC is going to put a note in the file of every applicant applying to law school about the spring 2020 semester, just to remind law schools that that was a very unusual semester. And then law schools are being encouraged to look at the student's record holistically and not just, not overly focus on spring 2020. And I think that will be the case. Okay. So the next element of the application is our letters of recommendation. So effective letters of recommendation can help your chance of admission to law school. What you want are 2 faculty letters of recommendation at least. And you want to have letters from faculty who can credibly and enthusiastically testify to your academic record and your future potential. You want the letters to have some details. You don't just want a letter that says, so-and-so got this grade in my class. They showed up every day. You really want the professor to talk more about, what you did in that class, what was the class structure, what were the nature of the assignments? Did you write a bunch of papers? Were you reading some really dense and difficult text that you were able to, really, comprehend and write about? So those are the kinds of letters that you want to have. So most law schools accept 2 to 4 letters. I would say you want 2 faculty letters for sure. And then if you have a 3rd or 4th letter, One might be from a significant extracurricular or a job, an internship you've had, and the same for the fourth letter. So you wouldn't want, maybe two from the same extracurricular, but if you've got additional letters that you think add something different to, tell something different about yourself, I think it's fine to add those letters as well, okay? Even when you're considering not applying as a senior and taking some time off before law school, I really recommend getting the letters of recommendation from faculty while you're on campus. I would get those. If you have an LSAC account, you can go ahead and upload those to the account and they just stay there. And that is because these letters are speaking to your experience and your abilities as a student. So they're not going out of date, whether or not you apply next year or in a few years. And I think law schools want to hear about you as a student. And so and that's one reason I recommend those, is because law schools are going to want to hear about you as a student. The second reason I recommend getting them now is because once you're off campus, once you've graduated, it might be harder to get those letters. It could be that the faculty has gone on sabbatical or left the institution, or just is more difficult to get a hold of. So I would recommend getting a couple of letters while you're still a full-time student, and then just keeping those until you decide to apply. Okay, the next element of the application is the personal statement. And so what is the admissions committee looking for? They're really looking for a story about you and why law school is your next logical step, okay? And that's a little bit different than an essay about, this is why I want to go to law school. It doesn't need to be an essay about, and this is why, law school is right for me. I like to think of the personal statement as describing something meaningful to you. And that could be a class, that could be an issue, that could be an extracurricular or an internship that you had. So you're going to talk about something that was meaningful to you, why it was meaningful to you, and then how you hope to take that experience forward into your professional career, okay? It's a 2-page double-spaced essay. We'll learn more about it on Wednesday when Susan Lowther leads the personal statement workshop, but those are the personal statements that I think are really effective. Yeah, so it's not really like why you want to go to law school, it's what's important to you, and it's about your story. Okay, resume is the next step. This is a pretty quick one. You don't need a special resume to apply to law school. Any resume really that you have is fine. I know we've got some friends from the Career Center on this Zoom. I think everybody appreciates a 1-page resume. If you've got a resume that's, a page and a half, for the purposes of law school, it doesn't really matter. So nothing special that you have to include. I think if you've got a current resume, that's all you need to submit for your law school applications. So let's talk a little bit about timeline. So when should you apply? How do you know if you're ready? So the first thing that I want to say about this, and that I think that, tomorrow we have a few law school admissions deans talking, there is no rush to apply to law school. So if you are on the fence, or you don't know if you're ready, then you're probably not ready to apply, right? Law school is going to be there every single fall. The process runs every single fall for you to go the next fall. And so if you're not ready this year, you can apply next year. It's not a hurry. You only become a stronger applicant as you have different experiences. So don't feel like you're weakening your application. You're really only strengthening it by having different experiences, doing whatever you choose to do. If that's, if that's working, if that's traveling, if that's going to, a different kind of grad school, anything that you choose to do, transitional programs like Teach for America or, Fulbright, anything like that, all are strengthening your application. And I would actually want you to include those before you apply. I don't think it makes sense to get one of those opportunities, and also apply to law school and then defer. I'm not, I don't necessarily see that as a huge benefit. So to the second question, should I go straight to law school or take a gap year? Most of the students that I am working with, or I should call them alumni, are WashU alumni who have been out of undergrad 1 to 3 years. So most people are not going straight through from undergrad. Again, if you've got other things you want to do, there is no rush to go to law school. Please feel free to take your time to explore other things. I think the other thing too is if you don't feel, I won't say 100% ready, maybe like 80% and more ready, do some exploring, talk to more lawyers, find people who do what you want to do or what you think you want to do, and talk to them about what does their day look like, what does their life look like, what do they wish they'd done. Make sure you're doing some informational interviewing and doing your work before you choose to apply. So again, just absolutely no rush. And to the third question, some law schools do have early action or early decision programs. This is something that we can ask our admissions deans in the session tomorrow. But it's not like undergrad. It's not highly standardized, the early action, early decision process. Some early decision schools promise you a lot of scholarship money if you apply early decision. Some early decision schools don't give you any money if you apply in their early decision. I think if it's a highly competitive school and it is your number one choice, early decision can be a good idea. Some schools don't have early decision at all. A lot of highly competitive schools may not have it at all. So it really varies. But I think, if it's a highly competitive school and it's your number one choice and they have early decision, that's probably a good time to do it. So the other thing that law school applications are going to ask you is what you might have to disclose in terms of academic integrity or other conduct violations. And the answer here is to disclose, disclose, disclose. So you have to disclose any academic integrity violation that you've received. University conduct violations, you should also disclose. Sometimes we have students with res life violations, and they're not sure if, the res life process is a little different than the formal Office of Student Conduct process. So I would suggest going to the Office of Student Conduct and finding out what's in your file in terms of, any conduct issue. If you were, a first-year student and you had an open container of alcohol, where do they see that? Where is that? What you don't want is to have, the university report something different than what you're reporting. That is what you do not want. So, most violations are not going to keep you out of law school, especially if there's been distance between when they happened, if a lot of them happened during your first year or sophomore year. But not being 100% honest with your disclosures can present problems, both for the law schools, and why the law schools are concerned about it for one reason is that when you get through law school, you go on to graduate and you try to become a member of a state bar association or the federal bar. They really go through everything. So of course, law schools don't want to have students who aren't going to be able to be members of the bar someday. So that's why it's really important to just be honest. The third question is about explaining grades or LSAT score or low LSAT scores. What is really low? So sometimes we have students interested in law school who started out perhaps in engineering or started out in pre-med, and their grades, started out lower than they ended up being. Is it fine to point that out to the law school that, you pulled your GPA up to whatever, but your first semester, really kept it from being even higher? I think that's worth pointing out. You don't have to point out if you got 1C ever, or a B minus, or, I don't think you have to point out one, lower grade. We're really, it's maybe a really anomalous semester that you want to explain. If you were, if you had a family situation or an illness or, you know, whatever special circumstances you would want to explain, but you don't need to explain the 1C you got freshman year. Same with LSAT. So for most law schools, they're going to use your higher LSAT score no matter, so if you take it twice, you don't have to worry or explain the first LSAT score for the most part if your second LSAT score went up or down. They're going to use your higher score. Some law schools do require an explanation if your score jumps by, like, I've heard 7 points. If your score jumps 7 points, the law school may ask for an explanation on what happened. I'll be honest with you, I don't know what I don't know what they're looking for. I mean, I guess, you know, you studied more. I don't know really what they want you to say. Again, maybe that's something we can talk to admissions deans tomorrow about, but I guess you would just say, didn't really put as much effort into it the first time, or maybe you took a prep course or got a different book the second time and just practiced more. Not sure what they're looking for with that answer. Okay. My slide won't go. Oh, there we go. So where should you apply? How many applications should you submit? So this is a really big question, and probably, you know, warrants some individual advising on this issue, because some people want to go to the highest ranked law school possible. Some people want to be in a certain part of the country, or know they're going to go back to their hometown and they want to practice, you know, be in their hometown, practice law in their hometown. And so it can make sense to go to a law school in that state. That might be the best move. So it really depends what you're looking for. Higher ranked law schools can give you more flexibility if you're not sure what you're going to end up doing. There are very strong regional law schools that can be great choices if you do know, you know, you're going to practice in Chicago, or you're going to practice in St. Louis, or, you know, or in Cleveland, or, you know, if there's a certain job market, it can be a great idea to go to a strong regional law school for your education. So as I mentioned, this last application cycle was really crazy. Applications were way up. And so where I used to say you would want to apply to about 8 to 12 law schools, last year the advice was really to apply to maybe like 12 to 15 law schools. We just needed to apply to more. I don't know what this next cycle holds, but I don't think it would be a bad idea to, you know, consider kind of that higher number until we hear otherwise. So looking for about 12 to 15 schools. And how do you know where you'll be competitive for law school? That's going to go into the, you know, LSAT and GPA is where we can help you kind of figure out where you're going to be competitive. I have law school WashU specific data for how WashU students and alumni have done, you know, in admission for different law schools. So kind of the scattergram that maybe you all, you know, your college counseling offices used in high school, we have something similar. We're not allowed to post that information. LSAC forbids us from posting it. So I have the information and I'm happy to go over it with anyone. As long as you have your LSAT score and GPA, we can go through, you know, as many schools as you'd like and look at everything. Okay, so that is my next slide. So summer to do. So if you are planning to apply next year in the fall, you should do as much as possible over the summer so that you feel ready to apply early in that application cycle, which usually opens in September. So you want to draft a personal statement, and we'll have more help to do that on Wednesday. You want to go ahead and contact professors. I think you can do that now about letters of recommendation, get on their schedule. You want to prepare for the LSAT, either for the summer or the fall, and become familiar with the LSAC website. So the LSAC website has a lot of information. It's lsac.org, but it's not the best website. It's not super user-friendly, but if you poke around there, you're going to find answers to a lot of the questions that you have. So spend some time. I didn't remember to say this regarding letters of recommendation. Often students ask, how do you approach a professor? about a letter of recommendation. So what I recommend is first sending an email. Can we set up a, yet another Zoom meeting to talk about writing a letter of recommendation. And you can mention to the professor how much you enjoyed their class, what you learned in their class, what else perhaps that led you to pursue or to take after taking their class, or what it made you think about. So you can provide that information, ask them to meet with you, and maybe set up a Zoom meeting to discuss further if they're agreeable to do so. And then what you want to give to the professor is your resume, maybe a draft of your personal statement. If you don't have it yet, at least maybe a paragraph or two about, kind of a statement of what you want to do next, kind of why do you want to go to law school, and what do you hope to do with your law degree. And so, the more materials you can give a professor, the better they feel about being able to write you a good letter. So I think that's really important to provide them with some information. And of course, don't spring it on them last minute. Make sure you ask. So if you ask this summer, we really have plenty of time between the summer and the fall for them to get that letter done. So I think that's all I had there. And then, so then saving September for a final LSAT tune-up. If you needed to retake the LSAT, you could, if you took it in the summer, or it's fine to take it for the first time in the fall. And then, getting great grades for your fall coursework, because they will want to see your fall grades a lot of times. If you're not, you may not be admitted, and they may ask to see your final fall 2021 grades. Okay, and so to contact me, I'm around most of the summer. You can always email me. I have a Calendly pre-law advising schedule, and I also have walk-in hours on Wednesdays, and you can find those Artsci Dean of the Day hours, and I'm Wednesday morning. Okay, and so with that, let me go. Or did anybody? Okay, I'm going to, let's see. So we had at least one question for junior transfer students. How many letters of rec should be from WashU versus before? That's a great question. I don't think it matters. You need faculty letters. So I think the strong, the letters, stronger letters, the better. I don't know how many years you did at, previous institution. I guess maybe a couple there, and you'll have a couple at WashU. But I think what they're going to be looking for are strong letters. So wherever you think you can get those. Does anybody else, let's see, there's no questions in chat. So please feel free to put questions in chat, or you can just ask me a question. Does anybody have a question? Don't be shy.
I have two quick questions.
Sure.
So the first is, did you say that the LSAT Flex is done in June?
The LSAT Flex is the only test offered now. So yes.
And so that we should be studying under those conditions of the Flex.
That's exactly right. Yes, you will not be sitting in a big room with a lot of people right now to take the LSAT. So yes, you can have, you should have, figure out where you're going to take it in your, in your house. Or sometimes students have asked me if the university can find them a quiet place to take the test, and I think the Learning Center can help with that. LSAC actually, if you really do not have a place to take the test, there are options through LSAC to even get a hotel room. I mean, if you are someone without, to find a quiet place is not possible, and you do not have the financial means to do so, there is a way to apply through the LSAC to even get a hotel room to take your test in a quiet place. So there are some options there. But yes, I think that's a good idea to think about where you're going to take that and make sure you have a quiet place to take the test.
And then if we take a gap year, do we still get the same resources from WashU if we start applying once we graduate?
Absolutely, yes. So I am working with alumni, lots of alumni who have been out 1 to 3 years. I work with alumni, some who have been out 5 to 7 years, or even more than 7 years. So yes, pre-law advising at WashU exists forever.
Thank you.
Great questions. Any other questions? And please let me know, Cindy, if there's anything in the chat, because I keep losing the chat box.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, I've heard conflicting information about the importance of directly relevant pre-law experience, like, for example, an internship with a law firm. If I don't have that but have a bunch of other experience that is not directly relevant but is like good substantial experience, how important is it for me to get that?
That's a really great question. Yeah, and kind of goes back to the component of resume. Law schools are not looking for you to have law firm or legal experience. It is very hard to get law firm or legal experience when you do not have any legal education. So it's tough. It's not impossible. Some people do have it, but it's not something that law schools really care about. I don't think you're getting points for it. Why it's good and why some people work as a paralegal or work with legal services or do different things like that. It's great for you, the applicant, to feel more confident that you're on the right path, right, and feel certain. But from the law school's perspective, they don't want everybody coming in with the same background. So and that's why it can also be beneficial to have different experiences, take some time off before law school, because when law schools are putting together their incoming class, they need people with different perspectives. There's lots of talking in law school, there's lots of debate, right? And you're reading these cases, and we need different perspectives to really have a robust discussion. If everybody is coming in with the exact same background and experience, you're not going to have as robust, be able to have as robust discussion. So yes, having other kinds of valuable experience is great. I think whatever you're bringing in, that's important. I know in my law school class, we had someone who had been a manager at Wendy's. We had someone who had been a professional opera singer. We had people coming in, with all different kinds of backgrounds. So they're not looking for one particular kind of experience or for everyone to have had the same experience. Any other questions? I'll talk a little bit more, and please feel free to use the chat if you'd like to put a question in the chat. Talk a little bit more about the LSAT and when it might be a good time to retake the test. So if, as I said, I think it's a great idea to study, focus, do your best, and the goal is to have one good score that you're really happy with. You'll see where if you take enough practice tests, which you need to do under test conditions, you will kind of know where you're consistently hitting. And if you're kind of consistently at your high mark, it may be that you're not going any higher. Everybody has kind of a band of where they're going to be on this test. And so if you take the test and you see that your score is not where you were consistently testing, you may want to take it again. If you had a bad day, or you were sick, or you didn't end up with quiet test conditions, or received some bad news, all find reasons to retake the LSAT. Again, most law schools are going to use your higher score, but I think what we see, what the data bears out, is that when students, you can't keep taking it and hope to improve. A lot of people will go up between first and second take. Not many people at all go up between second and third take. So, I think, this is kind of a grueling test. It's several hours. It's not super fun. So, I think as you continue to take it, I've seen students really, it's kind of like, there's some psychological buildup, I think, of, as you have to keep going in and taking this test over and over. So I think, prepare for once. If you have to take it twice, that's great. If you're thinking about taking it a third time, that's something that I really want to talk with you about, because what it might mean is that we need to look at schools that are going to be great schools in the range for where you are. And there are schools in the range for, more than just the top level LSATs. There are a lot of great schools. Okay, I see a question. Oh, no questions. Okay. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, and no questions in the WOVA. Other questions? Does taking it twice greatly impact how law schools view us as candidates? No, not at all. They just look at the higher score. Hopefully, your score went up, but even if your score goes down between the first and second taking of the test, that doesn't affect the way law schools look at you. And I think you have a maximum time, I think you can't take it more than like 5 times in 7 years or something like that. I mean, I've never had anybody have that issue, but there is some sort of cap in the number of times you can take the test in a number of years. You're welcome. Feel free, if you have any questions, you can just shout them out. I'm just looking back through my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I got it all. Any final questions? All right, if not, this is the information on how to find me. Please let me, I'm really happy that you all came. I feel much better about having individual conversations with you all now that you came and got this general information, and thanks to everyone for asking questions, because I think we all learned from each other. And you all have such great questions. Okay, I am supposed to remind everybody. Okay, so tomorrow we have the session for law school admissions deans. We're going to have admissions deans from WashU, Duke, and University of Chicago. They are all really great. They've all come to Junior Jumpstart before, so think of more questions. And some of these things that we talked about today, we'll want to ask them and get their take. We'll want to ask them, how do they look at, having taken the LSAT twice? What kind of experience do they like to see when students aren't coming from straight through school? So please come to tomorrow's session, questions with the law school admissions deans, and bring your questions. Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, and there's also, I'm being told, there's also a lawyer, Matt Ampleman, who will be on the panel for post-grad activism, continuing a cause and finding new community. So he is an attorney at a private firm in St. Louis. He has previously worked in legal services for Eastern Missouri and done a lot of other, public service. And is still involved in that. And so that is often something that's great to hear if you are someone who is, interested in public service and civic minded, but your job, maybe that's not what, most of your job involves. How can you do both? How can you stay involved and feel like you're making a difference, while working a different kind of job? So please go see Matt tomorrow. He's really great. He's a WashU alum as well. Okay, I have another question. For letters of recommendation, do we have to find faculty related to law? No, you do not have to find faculty related to law. So it can be faculty from your major, whatever faculty. What you want are good letters. Good letters is the most important thing. And so that doesn't mean it has to be, the chair of the department. It should be a faculty member who's taught you and who knows you. And so maybe you've had more than one class with this person. Maybe you went to their office hours a lot. Maybe you were their TA or did some research for them. So looking for ways, looking for faculty that really know you versus like, I've got to get Chancellor Andrew Martin to write my letter. Do law schools look at school GPA at all in contrast to the LSAT GPA? Well, so they look at school GPA because it's on your transcript. I mean, and they are going to look at your transcript, but really to make sure, kind of like everybody's GPA is kind of being put in a level playing field. They're looking at that LSAC GPA, but they will see your real GPA from on your transcript, I guess, if that's your question. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to say, but it may have escaped me. But if I think of it, I will tell you guys tomorrow when I see you then. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. So Law School Deans tomorrow, Tuesday, personal statement workshop on Wednesday, which is going to be great. It's going to send you away with a good draft to continue to work on, so you don't have to stare at a blank laptop or piece of paper. All right, I think we'll end it. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. Bye.
Bye, Carol. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. See you later.
Thank you.